My husband forbade me from visiting the North Barn for 40 years. He said it was dangerous, filled with old, rusted equipment and structural rot. He made me swear on our Bible that I would never set foot past the old oak tree. I respected his wishes because Elijah was a good man, a provider, and I loved him. But 3 days after his funeral, his lawyer handed me a heavy iron key and whispered, "It is yours now, Viola. Be careful." I drove to the farm in the pouring rain expecting to find a dusty workshop or perhaps evidence of a decades-long affair. I thought I was prepared for anything. I was wrong. When I turned that key and pushed open the heavy steel door, I did not find tractors or hay bales. I found a hum that vibrated in my chest and blinking lights that stretched into the darkness. I found a climate-controlled fortress worth millions of dollars hidden inside a rotting wooden shell. And then I heard a voice from the shadows say, "Dad, is that you?" I froze. A young man stepped into the light holding a phone, looking terrified. He was not my son, but he was calling my husband Dad. And before I could even scream, my phone rang. It was my daughter screaming that her husband was on his way to the farm with a gun, and he knew I was there. My name is Viola. I am 68 years old, a retired hospital administrator from Atlanta, and this is how I discovered my dead husband left me a fortune and a war. Before we continue, please leave a comment telling us where you are watching from and subscribe to the Never Too Old channel. We are creating a community of people who know that our best chapters can happen at any age. Now back to the story. The rain was hammering against the tin roof of the barn so hard I could barely hear my own breathing. I stood there in the doorway, my hands still gripping the cold iron key water dripping from the hem of my black funeral coat. My brain could not process what my eyes were seeing. From the outside, this building looked like it was about to collapse, just peeling red paint and rotting wood that Elijah had refused to fix for decades. But the inside was like stepping into the future. The air was crisp and cold, smelling of ozone and expensive filtration systems. Rows of black towers with blinking blue and green lights lined the walls, humming with a low, powerful vibration that I could feel in the soles of my shoes. In the center of the room were vertical glass columns glowing with purple UV lights, filled with lush green plants growing without soil. It looked like a laboratory. It looked like NASA. It certainly did not look like the hobby farm of a retired mechanic. "Who are you?" The voice came again, sharper this time. The young man stepped fully into the light of the LED panels. He was tall, with dark skin and intense eyes that widened when he saw me. He was wearing a hoodie and jeans, holding a tablet in one hand and a flashlight in the other. He looked to be about 30. He looked scared. I stepped forward, letting the heavy door click shut behind me, sealing out the noise of the storm. "I am Viola Davis. This is my property. Who are you, and why did you call my husband Dad?" The young man lowered the flashlight. "Viola." He breathed out the name like a prayer. "He said you would come eventually. But he said you would wait. He said you wouldn't come this soon." My heart was hammering against my ribs. I walked closer, my heels clicking on the polished concrete floor. This floor was supposed to be dirt. Everything I thought I knew about my life was dissolving in this strange, cold light. "Answer the question. Why did you call him Dad? Is he your father?" The young man shook his head frantically. "No. No, ma'am. Not biological. He saved me. He was the only father I ever knew. My name is Marcus. Elijah didn't tell you about me. He didn't tell me about any of this." I gestured around the room. "What is this place, Marcus? What was my husband doing?" Marcus looked at the banks of servers and the glowing plants. "He was building you a life raft, Mrs. Davis. That is what he called it. He said one day the sharks would come and you would need a place they could not touch. He said he mined digital currency here, crypto, and high-yield vertical farming. He said it was the only way to leave you enough money that Chase couldn't steal it." The name hit me like a physical blow. Chase, my son-in-law. The man who had stood by my husband's grave 48 hours ago without shedding a single tear. My mind flashed back to the funeral 2 days prior. The image was so vivid it made me nauseous. We were standing on the wet grass at the cemetery. The preacher was still reading the final Psalms. I was holding the flag they had folded for Elijah's military service, trying to keep my composure. I had spent 40 years managing hospital crises, handling life and death decisions, and I knew how to keep my face stone. But inside, I was breaking. And right there, right next to the open grave, Chase had leaned in close to my ear. He smelled of expensive cologne and stale liquor. "Mom, we need to talk about the farm," he had whispered. I tried to step away, but he gripped my elbow. His fingers were digging into my coat. "This isn't the time." "Chase," I had hissed, "it is exactly the time, Viola. Look, I did some digging. Elijah left a mess. He has medical debts. Huge debts. The hospital is going to put a lien on everything. I found a buyer for that old scrap of land in the country. A developer. He is offering $200,000 cash. We can pay off the debts and put you in a nice assisted living facility in Buckhead. You just need to sign the power of attorney. Today." I remembered looking at him. Chase was a commercial real estate broker who drove a leased Porsche and wore suits that cost more than my first car. He had always looked down on Elijah for working with his hands. But in that moment, I saw something else in his eyes. Desperation. Panic. I pulled my arm away from him. Elijah had full coverage insurance from the VA and his union pension. "We do not have medical debts, Chase, and I am not going to a home." Chase's face had twisted into something ugly. "You don't know what you are talking about, Viola. You are old and you are grieving and you are confused. You need a man to handle this. Sign the papers or you will lose everything." Back in the high-tech barn, the memory made my blood boil. Elijah knew. He knew Chase was a shark. That is why he built this. That is why he hid it. Marcus was watching me, his face filled with concern. "He said Chase was in trouble," Marcus said quietly. "Bad trouble, gambling debts, bad investments. He said Chase would come for you the second he was gone." Suddenly, a piercing alarm echoed through the facility. Red lights began to flash on the ceiling. Marcus looked at his tablet, and his face went gray. "Sensors at the main gate," he said. "Someone just rammed the lock. They are coming up the driveway fast." My phone began to ring in my pocket. The ringtone echoed in the large metal room. I pulled it out. It was Nia, my daughter, my poor, sweet, spineless daughter who had never made a decision without asking Chase first. I answered the phone. "Mama." Nia was sobbing, her voice high and hysterical. "Mama, are you at the farm? Chase said the GPS on your car showed you were there. You have to get out. He is coming. He is so angry, Mama. He says you are stealing his inheritance. He says you are meeting a lover. He has a gun, Mama. He took his gun from the safe." I looked at Marcus. He was already moving his fingers, flying across a keyboard at a terminal near the hydroponic tubes. "I am locking us down," he yelled over the alarm. "The steel shutters are coming down. Stay away from the door." "Nia," I said into the phone, my voice steady and cold, the voice I used when I had to fire incompetent doctors. "Why does your husband have a gun, Nia? Why is he coming here to kill his mother-in-law over a piece of dirt? He owes money, Mama." Nia wailed. "He owes so much money. The people he owes, they said they would hurt us. He promised them the farm. He sold it to them last week, Mama. He sold your farm before Daddy was even buried. He needs you to sign the deed to make it legal. He says if he does not get that signature tonight, they are going to kill him. Please, Mama, just give him what he wants." I hung up the phone. I stared at the screen for a second before sliding it back into my pocket. He sold my property. He sold my husband's legacy to cover his gambling debts. And now he was coming to take it by force. Marcus looked up from the computer. "The shutters are down. But they are only aluminum. If he has a truck, he can ram them. Do we have a weapon?" I looked at this young man, this stranger who my husband had raised in the shadows. I smoothed the front of my coat. I straightened my spine. I thought about the 40 years I spent running a trauma center in downtown Atlanta. I thought about the riots, the budget cuts, the arrogant surgeons, and the gang members I had stared down in the ER waiting room. "No," I said calmly. "We don't need a gun, Marcus. Open the shutters." Marcus looked at me like I was insane. "Mrs. Davis, he has a weapon. He is desperate. Open them," I commanded. "Let him in. If he wants to play the gangster, let him see who he is really dealing with. Elijah didn't just leave me a fortress. He left me you. And I assume this system records everything." "Everything," Marcus nodded. "Audio, video, thermal. It uploads directly to a cloud server in Switzerland." Elijah was paranoid. Good, I said. Then let's get my son-in-law on camera committing a felony. Open the door. The sound of an engine roaring grew louder outside. Tires crunched on gravel, followed by the sickening sound of metal impacting wood as the perimeter fence was breached. The heavy steel door of the barn groaned as the electric motor engaged, lifting it slowly. The rain swirled in cold and violent. Headlights blinded us for a moment. A massive black pickup truck sat idling in the mud, its engine growling. The door flew open. Chase stepped out into the rain. He wasn't wearing a raincoat. His expensive suit was instantly soaked. He looked wild. His hair was plastered to his forehead, and in his right hand hanging by his side was a black pistol. He didn't see the servers yet. He didn't see the plants. He was blinded by the headlights and his own rage. All he saw was me, an old woman standing in the doorway of a dilapidated barn. "Viola," he screamed, his voice cracking. "You stupid old woman! Get out here! Give me the keys and sign the papers. I am done asking nicely." I stepped forward out of the shelter of the doorway and into the rain. The cold water hit my face, waking up every nerve in my body. I did not flinch. I walked until I was 10 feet away from him. I stood with my hands clasped in front of me, the posture of a woman who has fired men twice his size. "Go home, Chase," I said. My voice was not loud, but it cut through the storm. "You are trespassing, and you are making a fool of yourself." He laughed a jagged, manic sound. He raised the gun, pointing it at my chest. "Trespassing. I own you, Viola. I own this dirt. I own your house. I own your daughter. And right now, I own your life. Now give me the deed, or I will bury you right next to your husband." He took a step forward, his boots squelching in the mud. That is when the motion sensor lights inside the barn fully activated, flooding the yard with a harsh, stadium-level brightness. Chase blinked, shielding his eyes. He looked past me, into the open barn door. He saw the servers. He saw the hydroponics, and he saw Marcus standing there holding a tablet, his face grim. Chase's jaw dropped. The gun wavered. What is that? Who is that? That I said taking a step closer to the barrel of his gun is the reason you are going to lose everything, Chase. That is the future. And that young man is the one person Elijah trusted, which says a lot about what he thought of you. Chase stared at Marcus. Recognition dawned on his face. "I know you," he whispered. "You are the janitor's kid, the one from high school, the one I got expelled." Marcus stepped out into the rain, standing beside me. He was taller than Chase, broad-shouldered. He didn't look like a janitor's kid anymore. He looked like a man who owned the ground he stood on. "You tried to get me sent to prison?" "Chase," Marcus said, his voice deep and calm. "You planted that wallet in my locker. You thought it was funny. Elijah was the only one who believed me. He hired the lawyer. He saved my life. And now I am saving his wife." Chase's face turned purple. You are stealing my money. That is my money in there." He lunged forward, raising the gun again, aiming it at Marcus this time. I moved. I didn't think. I just moved. I stepped between them. "Shoot me then, Chase," I challenged him. "If you are big enough to kill an unarmed woman, do it. But know this, there are 4 cameras pointing at you right now. That footage is already on a server in Europe. You pull that trigger, and you don't just lose the money, you go to death row." Chase hesitated. The rain ran down his face like sweat. He looked at the cameras. He looked at me. He looked at the fortune glowing inside the barn. The greed was warring with the fear in his eyes. Suddenly, tires screeched on the main road. Another car came flying up the driveway, fishtailing in the mud. It was Nia's SUV. She slammed on the brakes and jumped out before the car had even stopped moving. She was wearing her pajamas and a raincoat, her hair in curlers. "Chase, stop!" she screamed, running toward us. "Don't do it!" Chase grabbed Nia as she reached him, spinning her around and holding her in front of him like a shield. He put the gun to her head. Nia screamed a sound that tore through my heart. "Back off!" Chase yelled, dragging Nia backward toward his truck. "Back off, or I swear to God, I will do it. She is useless to me anyway if I don't get this money." Nia looked at me, her eyes wide with shock. She had spent 10 years worshiping this man. She had alienated me, ignored her father, and given Chase control of every dime she earned. And now he was holding a gun to her head like she was nothing but leverage. The betrayal was total. I saw the light go out in her eyes. The illusion of her happy marriage shattered in the rain. "Chase," I said, my voice dropping to a deadly calm. "Let her go. You want the farm. Fine. You can have it. Just let my daughter go." "I don't believe you," he screamed. He was backing toward the truck, dragging Nia. "You are lying. You always hated me. I hate you now," I said. "But I love her." I reached into my pocket and pulled out the iron key. "Here. This opens the master control. Take it. Just release her." I threw the key. It landed in the mud between us. Chase looked at it. Greed won. It always does with men like him. He shoved Nia to the ground and lunged for the key. Now Marcus yelled. He tapped his tablet. A high-pitched whine echoed from the barn, and the perimeter sprinklers industrial grade meant for irrigation exploded to life. But they weren't aimed at the crops. Marcus had reconfigured them. A solid wall of high-pressure water slammed into Chase, knocking him backward into the mud. He dropped the gun. He dropped the key. He flailed, blinded and choking on the mud and water. "Get inside!" I grabbed Nia by the arm and dragged her toward the barn. Marcus grabbed the gun from the mud and followed us, hitting the button to lower the steel door. We slid under it just as it clanged shut, sealing us inside the fortress. Outside, we could hear Chase screaming, pounding on the metal door. But inside, it was quiet, just the hum of the servers. Nia sat on the floor, shivering mud staining her pajamas. She looked up at me, mascara running down her face. "He was going to kill me, Mama," she whispered. "He actually put a gun to my head." I knelt down and wrapped my coat around her shoulders. Yes, he was baby. I looked at Marcus, who was checking the security feed. Chase was out there pacing like a caged animal kicking the dirt. He wasn't leaving. He was trapped too by his debts and his desperation. "This isn't over," I told them. "He is not going to leave, and neither are his creditors. We are under siege." Marcus pulled up a file on the large monitor. "Mrs. Davis, there is something else you need to see. Elijah didn't just leave money. He left a file, a dossier on Chase. He knew about the debts. He knew about the fraud. But he also found something else. What I asked." Marcus clicked a button. A document appeared on the screen. It was a birth certificate. From Florida, dated 5 years ago. Father Chase Miller. Mother, a woman who was definitely not Nia. "He has a second family," Viola Marcus said. "That is why he needs the money. He is not just paying gambling debts, he is paying blackmail to keep his other life secret." Nia let out a sound that wasn't human, a keen of pure agony. I held her tight, staring at the screen. The betrayal wasn't just financial. It wasn't just physical. It was total. My husband had known. He had known everything. And he had left us the weapon to destroy him. I stood up. "Marcus, how much is this facility worth?" "The equipment alone is $3 million, Marcus said. "The crypto in the cold wallets, maybe another 5. "The proprietary farming tech, priceless to the right buyer." I nodded. I looked at the steel door. Chase was still out there. And soon, the men he owed money to would come looking for him. "Call the police, Marcus," I said. "But not the local sheriff. Chase plays golf with him. Call the FBI. Tell them we have evidence of wire fraud, interstate racketeering, and attempted murder. And tell them to hurry. Because I have a feeling Chase isn't the only one coming up that driveway tonight." As Marcus dialed, I looked at the hydroponic columns. My husband, the man who barely finished high school, the man who fixed tractors for a living, had built a kingdom to save us. He had kept secrets to protect us. And now I was going to use those secrets to bury the man who tried to destroy his family. Nia looked up at me, her eyes hard for the first time in her life. "Mama," she said, her voice trembling but clear. "Don't let him get away. He won't, I promised." I turned to the security monitor. Chase was on his phone now, pacing frantically. He was calling for backup. He was calling the sharks. Let them come, I thought. I am Viola Davis. I have a fortress. I have the truth. And I am done being polite. The rain hammering against the metal roof brought me straight back to the cemetery 48 hours ago. The mud had been thick there too, clinging to my heels as I stood over Elijah's casket, while my daughter Nia wept into a handkerchief. Her husband Chase stood dry-eyed, checking his watch 3 times during the eulogy. He didn't look like a grieving son-in-law. He looked like a man late for a business meeting. Before the first shovel of dirt even hit the wood, Chase had cornered me. He leaned in close, his breath smelling of peppermint and opportunity, and whispered in my ear, "Mom, we have a problem. Elijah left a mess. I didn't want to worry you, but the hospital bills are astronomical. Over $200,000 not covered by insurance." I had stared at him through my black veil, my grief momentarily replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. Chase continued pressing a folded document into my hand, right there by the gravesite. "I found a buyer for the farm property. It is a miracle, honestly, considering it is just a swamp. He is offering cash just enough to cover the debt and put a little away for you. Sign this authorization now, and I can stop the collections agents from harassing you. He thought I was just a grieving widow. He forgot I was the director of administration at St. Jude's Hospital for 30 years. I knew Elijah's benefits package better than I knew my own Social Security number. Between his union pension and his military service, my husband didn't pay a dime for medical care. There were no debts. There were no collections agents. There was only a lying real estate broker trying to steal land from a fresh widow." I looked at the paper in my hand, then at Chase. I shoved the document back into his chest, hard enough to make him stumble. "We will discuss this later," I had said, my voice ice cold. But looking at his eyes, I saw panic, real sweating panic. He wasn't just greedy, he was desperate. Back in the barn, the hum of the servers brought me to the present. I looked at Marcus, this stranger standing in my husband's secret empire. "So you are the one he spent the money on," I said. "You are the reason he needed a fortress." Marcus shook his head. "No, ma'am. I am not a secret son. I am the kid Elijah pulled out of juvenile detention 15 years ago when everyone else said I was trash. He paid for my coding classes. He gave me a purpose. He didn't build this place for me. He built it for you. He knew Chase was dangerous. He knew about the gambling debts long before anyone else. This isn't just a farm, Viola. It is a vault. It is a financial bunker designed to keep you safe when the wolves come knocking." Suddenly, a harsh electronic chime cut through the air. The lights on the wall turned from a calming blue to an angry, pulsing red. Marcus spun around to a bank of monitors. His fingers flew across a keyboard. "What is that?" I asked, my heart rate spiking. "Motion sensors at the perimeter," Marcus said, his voice tight. "Someone just smashed through the front gate." He pulled up a grainy video feed. A black truck was tearing up the dirt road mud, flying from the tires, heading straight for us. I recognized the custom grill immediately. It was Chase, and he wasn't coming to talk. My phone rang a shrill sound that cut through the hum of the servers and the pounding rain outside. The screen lit up with my daughter's name. "Nia." I slid the answer button, and before I could even say hello, a scream tore through the speaker. "Mama, get out of there. He knows. He knows you are at the farm." Her voice was high and thin, hysterical, the sound of a woman who has been crying for hours. I pressed the phone tighter to my ear. "Slow down, baby. Who knows?" "Chase," she sobbed. "He has a tracker on your car, Mama. He saw it moving. He saw it stop at the north barn. He went crazy. He is screaming that you are looting the estate. He says you are stealing his inheritance, and he is coming to stop you." I looked at Marcus. He was standing by a bank of monitors, his face illuminated by the blue glow of the screens. He could hear every word. "He is bringing a locksmith." Mama Nia continued, her breath hitching, "and he went to the safe. I saw him take the pistol. He says he has the right to defend his property. He says you have lost your mind. He told me you are having a breakdown, that you are senile and dangerous, and he has to put you down before you destroy everything Daddy built." The accusation hit me like a physical slap. Senile. That was Chase's favorite weapon. For years he had been painting me as the fragile, confused widow, waiting for the day he could legally push me aside. He was a commercial real estate broker who wore Italian suits and drove leased luxury cars, but everyone in Atlanta real estate knew the truth about Chase. He was thirsty. He was the kind of man who leveraged everything he touched. 10 years ago, he convinced his own parents to refinance their home to fund a strip mall development that never broke ground. They lost the house. They died in a rental apartment while Chase was driving a Mercedes. He had no bottom line. And now that Elijah was gone, I was the only thing standing between him and a payout he desperately needed. Viola Marcus said sharply. He pointed to the screen. "He is 2 minutes out." I looked back at the phone. "Nia, listen to me. Your husband is not coming to save the estate. He is coming to erase me. Do you understand that?" "Mama, please just leave," she wailed. "Just come home. We can fix this." "He is desperate, Mama. The bank called today. They are going to take our house. He says the farm is the only way out." Marcus didn't wait for me to give the order. He tapped a sequence of keys on his console. A heavy mechanical thud echoed through the barn as the magnetic locks on the steel doors engaged. Thick metal shutters began to roll down over the high windows, cutting off the view of the storm outside. The barn was sealing itself up like a bank vault. "He is almost here," Marcus said. I could hear the engine now, a roar getting louder over the sound of the rain. "Nia," I said, my voice low and steady. "If you love me, you will call the police. You will tell them your husband has a gun and he is threatening your mother." "I can't," she whispered. "He said if I call anyone, he will leave me. He said I would be alone." Before I could answer, the barn was flooded with light. Twin beams from high-powered headlights swept across the covered windows, illuminating the dust motes in the air. The roar of the engines spiked, followed by a sickening, splintering crash as a heavy vehicle smashed through the wooden pasture gate outside. "He is here," I said, and I hung up the phone. The pickup truck skid to a halt just feet from the steel door. I could hear the engine idling, a deep, angry growl. Then a heavy fist pounded against the metal. "Open up!" Viola Chase's voice was muffled by the steel, but still clear enough to hear the rage trembling in it. "I know you are in there. Open this door or I will burn this whole place to the ground." I looked at Marcus. He wasn't trembling. He looked ready. "Let him try," Marcus said. The confrontation had begun. The metallic clang of a heavy tool hitting the steel door reverberated through the barn like a gunshot. I watched on the security monitor as Chase jumped down from the cab of his truck. He didn't look like the polished real estate broker who charmed little old ladies out of their deeds anymore. His expensive suit was soaked, his hair plastered to his skull, and his eyes were wide and wild. He reached into the bed of the truck and pulled out a long, rusted crowbar. He weighed it in his hand, staring at the reinforced door like he wanted to tear it off its hinges with his teeth. "Come out here, you senile old witch!" he screamed, his voice cracking over the storm. "I know you are in there, Viola. Stop playing games." I stood next to Marcus at the control console. The high-definition screen showed every drop of rain hitting Chase's face, every vein bulging in his neck. He thought I was alone. He thought I was cowering in the dark, terrified of his anger. He had no idea he was screaming at a fortress. "Open this door right now," Chase yelled, swinging the crowbar against the steel again. The sound was deafening inside, but the door didn't budge. "Do you hear me, Viola? If you make me break this down, I am driving you straight to the psych ward myself. I will have you declared incompetent by morning. You will rot in a state facility while I sell this dump for scrap." I looked at Marcus. He nodded at a microphone on the desk. It was connected to a PA system. Elijah had installed loudspeakers mounted under the eaves of the barn roof. I pressed the button. My hand didn't shake. "Chase," my voice boomed over the yard, amplified and distorted slightly by the storm rolling over him like thunder. "Step away from the door." Chase jumped back, looking around wildly for the source of the sound. He hadn't expected a voice from the sky. He spun in a circle, the crowbar raised like a weapon. "Viola, is that you? Stop hiding behind the walls and face me. Take one more step toward that door." I continued, my voice cold and hard, "and I will consider it a threat to my life. This is criminal trespassing, Chase, and you are armed." He laughed, a wet, ugly sound. "Trespassing. I am family. I am doing this for your own good. You are sick, Viola. You are confused. You are hoarding assets that don't belong to you. Now open the door before I call the sheriff and tell him you are having a psychotic episode." He didn't care about my health. He didn't care about family. He cared about the $2 million he owed to men who didn't take IOUs. I watched on the screen as he wiped rain from his eyes. He looked up and spotted the security camera mounted above the door, the red recording light blinking in the darkness. His face twisted into a snarl. "You want to record this? You want a show? Fine." He raised the crowbar and swung it with all his strength at the camera. The feed on our monitor staticed and went black. He broke the feed. Marcus said, calmly switching views to a secondary camera mounted higher up. But he didn't break the door. On the new screen, we saw Chase stepping back, measuring the gap between the door frame and the steel slab. He jammed the tip of the crowbar into the seam and leaned his entire weight against it. He wasn't stopping. He was coming in. The grinding sound of metal on metal stopped as the heavy steel door began to slide upward. I stood in the center of the opening, the bright lights from the barn silhouetting my figure against the darkness. Chase stumbled back, shielding his eyes, the crowbar dangling from his hand. He looked like a cornered animal, soaked and shivering, but his eyes were still full of that desperate, dangerous greed. He didn't see Marcus yet. Marcus was standing just inside the shadows, out of the direct light, watching. Finally, Chase yelled, dropping the crowbar into the mud. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a crumpled, damp piece of paper. He shoved it toward my face. "Read it, Viola. This is a power of attorney, signed by Elijah. Last week, I have the legal authority to sell this property. You are obstructing a legal transaction." I took the paper from his hand. It was damp, but the ink was still legible. I looked at the signature at the bottom. Elijah Davis. It was perfect. The loops of the E and the D were crisp, the line steady and strong. It was the signature of a man in his prime, a man with steady hands and a clear mind. I looked up at Chase, and a cold smile touched my lips. "You are not very smart, are you, Chase?" "What are you talking about?" he spat. "That is his signature. I witnessed it myself. Last week I said my voice calm and precise. Elijah was in a medically induced coma in the ICU. His hands were swollen to twice their normal size from edema. He couldn't even hold a spoon, let alone a pen. And even if he could, his signature hasn't looked like this in 10 years. His hands shook from the Parkinson's tremors. You forgot about the tremors, didn't you, Chase? Chase froze. His eyes darted from the paper to my face. This signature is too clean. I continued tapping the paper. Too perfect. You traced it. Or maybe you used one of those autopen machines you real estate brokers love so much. Either way, this is a forgery. And presenting a forged document to claim authority over an estate is a felony. Chase's face went white, then red. "Give me that!" he screamed, lunging forward to snatch the paper back. He didn't get the chance. Before his hand could reach me, a figure stepped out from the darkness. Marcus moved with a fluid, dangerous grace, placing himself directly between me and Chase. He didn't raise a hand, didn't make a threat. He just stood there, solid and immovable. Chase skidded to a halt in the mud. He looked up at Marcus, really looked at him for the first time. The recognition hit him like a physical blow. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. "Hello, Chase." Marcus said, his voice low and smooth. "It has been a long time. You look like you have seen a ghost." Chase took a step back, his eyes wide with disbelief. "You," he whispered. "It can't be. You are supposed to be in prison." "I got out early," Marcus said. "Good behavior. And a very good lawyer. The kind Elijah hired for me. The kind who proves that rich kids like you plant evidence." Chase looked from Marcus to me, the realization dawning on him. The pieces were falling into place. The barn, the security, the young man protecting his mother-in-law. You two are working together," Chase stammered. "You plotted this. You are trying to steal my inheritance." "Inheritance?" I said, stepping up beside Marcus. "You don't have an inheritance, Chase. You have a debt, and tonight it is coming due." Chase stared at Marcus' rainwater dripping from his nose, his eyes narrowing as the memory fully took hold. I saw the moment the arrogance returned, replacing the shock. It was the same look he had 15 years ago when he stood in our living room, a spoiled teenager in a prep school blazer, pointing a finger at the housekeeper's son. I didn't steal the Rolex, Chase had said back then, smooth as silk. Marcus took it. I saw him. I remember that day. Marcus was 15, skinny and terrified, being dragged out of our house in handcuffs while his mother wept in the kitchen. Everyone believed Chase. Everyone except Elijah. Elijah had paid for the defense attorney. Elijah had visited juvenile detention every Sunday. I hadn't understood why back then, but looking at the man standing beside me, now solid and unwavering, I finally understood. My husband saw the integrity in the janitor's son that our own son-in-law had never possessed. "You are still trash," Chase spat, taking a step forward, his hands balling into fists. "Once a thief, always a thief. I don't know what con you ran on Elijah to get him to build you this clubhouse, but it ends tonight. Move out of my way, convict, or I will finish what I started in high school." Chase lunged, raising his hand as if to strike. I flinched, but Marcus didn't even blink. He didn't raise his fists. He didn't step back. He simply raised one finger and pointed toward the ceiling of the barn where a small black dome blinked with a steady rhythm. "Look up, Chase," Marcus said, his voice calm, almost bored. Chase froze, his eyes darting to the ceiling. "That is a 4K resolution camera with night vision and audio capture," Marcus explained. "And before you think about smashing it like you did the one outside, you should know something about how this system works. It does not record to a hard drive in this room. It streams directly to an encrypted cloud server in Zurich." Chase lowered his hand, but his chest was heaving. "So what?" he sneered. So Marcus continued, stepping into Chase's personal space looming over him. "That means every threat you just made, every slur you just used, and the fact that you are currently trespassing and menacing an elderly woman with a weapon has already been saved, backed up, and emailed to 3 different lawyers. And just for fun, I set up a protocol that automatically forwards any footage of illegal activity directly to the Georgia Real Estate Commission." Chase went pale. His license, his livelihood. The only thing keeping his house of cards from collapsing completely was his ability to close deals. If he lost his broker's license, he was dead in the water. "You wouldn't," Chase whispered. "Try me," Marcus said. "Take one more step, throw one punch, see how fast your license gets revoked." For a long, tense moment, the only sound was the rain pounding against the roof and the hum of the servers. Chase looked at the camera, then at me, then at Marcus. The violence drained out of him, replaced by something colder and much more dangerous. He took a step back, smoothing his wet hair, composing his face into a mask of sanity. "Fine," Chase said, his voice low. "You want to play games with technology? We can do that. You think you have won because you have a camera. But you forgot one thing." He turned his back on us and walked toward the open door, stopping just at the threshold where the rain met the concrete. He looked back over his shoulder, and for the first time that night he smiled. It was a smile that made my blood run cold. "You are trapped in here," he said, "and I know exactly how to smoke you out." The tires of Nia's SUV screeched against the gravel as she skidded to a halt next to Chase's truck. She practically fell out of the driver's seat, her face a mask of running mascara and terror. Chase did not miss a beat. The moment he saw his wife, the vicious snarl vanished from his face, replaced instantly by a look of wounded concern. He rushed to her, wrapping his arms around her trembling shoulders, effectively turning his back to me and Marcus. "Baby, thank God you are here," Chase said, his voice thick with fake emotion. "I tried to reason with them. I tried to protect you from seeing this." He gestured wildly at the glowing server farm behind me, at Marcus standing stoically by the console. "Look at this, Nia. Just look at it. This is where your inheritance went. This is why there is no money. Your father was not investing. He was building a nest for him." He pointed a shaking finger at Marcus. Nia looked up, her eyes wide and confused, darting from the expensive equipment to the handsome young man standing next to her mother. Chase leaned in, whispering loud enough for me to hear, twisting the knife. "Your mother is in on it, Nia. She is conspiring with this boy toy to steal everything. Your dad had a secret life. He used our money, your future, to build a paradise for his lover, and now your mother is helping him loot the estate right in front of our eyes." It was a lie so vile, so absurd, that I expected Nia to laugh. Instead, she broke. The narrative Chase spun fed every insecurity she had, every fear that she was not enough. She pulled away from him and turned on me. Her face twisted into a look of pure hatred I had never seen before. "How could you?" she screamed, her voice raw. "Daddy was a cheater, and you are helping him. You are disgusting." She took a step toward me, her hands shaking. "I defended you, Mama. I told Chase you were grieving, but you are just a thief. You are stealing my future to give to some stranger. I hate you. Do you hear me? I do not have a mother anymore." She spat at the ground near my feet. The disrespect was so profound, so absolute, that time seemed to stop. I did not try to explain. I did not try to defend Elijah's honor or introduce Marcus. There are moments when words are useless, when the only language a hysterical child understands is shock. I walked up to my daughter. She was trembling, waiting for me to beg for her forgiveness. Instead, I drew back my hand and slapped her across the face. The sound was sharp and loud, echoing off the steel walls of the barn. Nia's head snapped to the side. She gasped, her hand flying to her cheek, silencing her scream. "Wake up!" I commanded, my voice low and dangerous. "Look at yourself, Nia. You are standing in the mud, disrespecting your father's memory and cursing the woman who gave you life, all because a man who gambled away your mortgage told you to. You are not a victim here. You are selling your soul to the devil, and you are doing it for cheap." Nia stared at me, tears pooling in her eyes, stunned into silence. Chase stepped in immediately, grabbing her arm and yanking her back, positioning himself as her protector once again. "You assaulted her!" Chase hissed, backing toward his truck, dragging a sobbing Nia with him. "I saw that. You are violent and you are unstable. This is over, Viola. You won the battle tonight because you have your little bodyguard and your cameras. But the war is not over." He opened the truck door and shoved Nia inside. He climbed into the driver's seat and slammed the door, rolling down the window for one last parting shot. "Enjoy your fortress tonight, old woman," he spat. "Because tomorrow morning I am coming back with a court order, a sheriff, and an eviction notice. I will have you committed, and I will bulldoze this place to the ground." The silence in the barn was heavier than the storm raging outside. After Chase's taillights disappeared into the rain, dragging my sobbing daughter with him, I felt an exhaustion so deep it settled into my bones. But Marcus did not let me rest. He touched my shoulder gently and guided me toward the back of the facility, past the humming servers and the rows of purple grow lights. We stopped in front of a wall of tool cabinets. Marcus reached behind a row of wrenches and pressed a hidden panel. A section of the wall hissed and slid open, revealing a heavy steel safe set directly into the concrete foundation. It wasn't a keypad lock. It was a biometric scanner glowing soft blue against the rough wood. "Elijah trusted you with his thumbprint," I asked quietly. "He trusted me with his life," Marcus replied. He placed his thumb on the glass. The scanner chirped, a green light flashed, and the heavy bolts retracted with a solid mechanical thud. I expected to see stacks of cash, maybe gold, the kind of things men hide when they don't trust banks. Instead, the safe was filled with manila folders, thick, heavy files labeled with dates spanning the last 5 years. "It is not just a farm," Marcus said, pulling the stack out and setting it on a workbench. "It was an investigation. Elijah wasn't just protecting his assets, Viola. He was building a case." I opened the first folder. My breath caught in my throat. It was a credit report, but not Chase's. It was Nia's. Her credit score, which had been pristine when she married him, was decimated. Page after page of high-interest loans, maxed-out credit cards, and second mortgages I knew nothing about. But the names on the loans weren't banks. They were LLCs with addresses in strip malls, predatory lenders, loan sharks. Chase had forged Nia's signature on every single one. He had leveraged my daughter's entire existence against debts she didn't even know existed. "Keep reading," Marcus said, his voice grim. I opened the next file. Photographs spilled out. They weren't of casinos or racetracks. They were of a small yellow house in Tallahassee, Florida. There were pictures of Chase walking out the front door, holding hands with a woman who looked nothing like Nia. She was blonde, petite, smiling. And in the next photo, he was lifting a child into the air. A little boy, maybe 4 years old, with Chase's nose and Chase's chin. My knees gave out. I grabbed the edge of the workbench to steady myself. "He has a family," I whispered. "A whole other family." For 5 years, Marcus confirmed. Elijah hired a private investigator when he noticed Chase making cash withdrawals from the joint accounts. He found the woman. He found the kid. He found the mortgage Chase is paying in Florida, while Nia pays the bills here in Atlanta. I stared at the photo of the little boy. Chase wasn't just a gambler. He was a sociopath living a double life. He was playing house in 2 states, funding one fantasy with the destruction of another. Look at the dates on the emails Marcus pointed to a printout. The woman in Florida thinks he is a venture capitalist. She thinks the money is endless. But last month she gave him an ultimatum: buy her a bigger house or she calls his wife. The pieces slammed together in my mind with terrifying clarity. The desperation in Chase's eyes at the funeral, the gun, the panic. He wasn't just trying to cover a gambling loss. He was trying to buy silence. He needed millions, and he needed them immediately, or his entire house of cards would burn down. He was cornered, and a cornered animal doesn't care who it hurts. He was willing to put his own wife on the street, willing to hold a gun to her head just to keep his secret buried in Florida. I looked up at Marcus. Chase isn't going to stop, I said, the realization chilling my blood. He can't stop. If he doesn't get this property, his life is over. He is coming back, Marcus agreed, and next time, he won't be alone. I closed the folder. My sadness evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. My husband had spent 5 years watching, waiting, gathering proof. He hadn't told me because he wanted to protect me from the heartbreak, but he had left me the ammunition. I picked up the file. Let him come, I said. He thinks he is fighting a widow. He has no idea he is fighting a war. The morning sun hitting the marble floor of First National Bank felt cold, not welcoming. I walked straight past the tellers to the glass office at the back. Robert, the branch manager who had handled Elijah's accounts for 20 years, looked up from his desk. He stood immediately, but he didn't smile. He didn't offer his hand. He looked like a man who was about to deliver a terminal diagnosis. Viola, he said, his voice tight. I was going to call you. I sat down without being asked. I need to see the logs for the Joint Retirement Trust, Robert, and I need to access the safe deposit box. Today. Robert sat back down slowly. He took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. He couldn't meet my eyes. Viola, there is nothing in the trust. The air left the room. I stared at him, waiting for the punchline of a terrible joke. What do you mean, nothing? That account had $500,000 in it. It was our life savings. It was the money Elijah put away so I would never be a burden to anyone. It is gone, Robert whispered. Chase came in last Tuesday, 4 days before Elijah died. I felt a roaring in my ears. Chase cannot access that account, Robert. It requires 2 signatures, mine and Elijah's, or a court order. He didn't use your signature, Robert said, turning his computer screen toward me. He used Nia's. He had her digital administrative password. He had her power of attorney authorization codes. He told me you and Elijah had decided to consolidate the funds. He said you wanted to move everything into a high-yield venture capital account managed by his firm to pay for Elijah's medical treatments. I looked at the screen. The balance read 0. A long string of red numbers showed a wire transfer to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. My son-in-law hadn't just stolen from me. He had used my daughter's identity to do it. He had made her an accomplice to the theft of her own mother's future. He lied. I said, my voice trembling with a rage so pure it burned my throat. Elijah had full insurance. We didn't need money for treatments. Chase stole it, Robert. He stole every dime. Robert's face went pale. Oh my God. Viola, I didn't know. He had the codes. It looked legitimate. I stood up, slamming my hand on his desk loud enough to make the tellers outside jump. Freeze it. Freeze everything. I want every account with the name Davis on it locked down tight. I want the security footage of him walking in here. I want the transaction logs, and I want the police here in 5 minutes. I am doing it now. Robert stammered, his fingers flying across his keyboard. I am locking the system. My phone buzzed in my purse. A harsh, urgent vibration that made me jump. I pulled it out, expecting a text from Marcus, or maybe another threat from Nia. It was an automated alert from the bank's fraud department. Critical alert. New application received. Second mortgage. Property 422 Willow Creek Lane. My house. The house I slept in. The the house Elijah and I had paid off 10 years ago. Chase wasn't done. He had drained the cash, and now while I was standing in the bank trying to save what was left, he was trying to sell the roof out from over my head. I drove my car like a weapon down the tree-lined streets of Buckhead. This was supposed to be the safe part of town, the place where success bought you security. But as I pulled into the driveway of my daughter's sprawling colonial estate, the illusion shattered. A bright orange sticker was plastered across the mahogany front door, an ugly screaming mark of shame that I could read from the curb. Foreclosure. Notice of eviction. The front door was unlocked. I pushed it open, and the sound of my heels echoed in a way that made my skin crawl. The house was empty. The custom silk drapes were gone. The Italian leather sofas were gone. The grand piano where Nia had taught her non-existent children to play in her dreams was gone. The only things left were cardboard boxes stacked haphazardly in the corners, and my daughter sitting in the middle of the bare hardwood floor, her knees pulled up to her chest. "Nia," I said, my voice echoing in the hollow room. She looked up. Her face was swollen, her eyes red-rimmed and wild. "Mama," she whispered, "they came this morning, the sheriff. He gave us 24 hours. I walked over to her, stepping over a pile of packing tape. "How did this happen, Nia? Chase told me his business was booming." Nia wiped her nose with the back of her hand. "It is just a misunderstanding, Mama. It is a bridge loan. Chase explained it to me. He said we needed to leverage the equity in the house to cover a temporary liquidity issue with the investors. He brought the papers home last week. He said it was just a formality like refinancing to get a better rate." I knelt down in front of her. "Did you read the papers, Nia? Did you actually read what you were signing?" She shook her head, a fresh wave of tears spilling over. "He said I wouldn't understand the legal jargon. He said I just needed to trust him. He told me to sign the quitclaim deed so he could move the asset into an LLC for protection. He said it was to keep us safe from liability." My stomach turned over. He hadn't refinanced. He had tricked his own wife into signing over the title of her home to a shell company, likely one he controlled, so he could sell it out from under her for quick cash. He had liquidated their life to pay his debts. And now, Nia continued, her voice taking on a desperate pleading edge, he says, "The bank made a mistake with the paperwork. He says he can fix it, Mama. He can buy the house back and pay off the loan. He just needs the capital. He says if you would just sign over the farm, he could fix everything today." She looked at me with such hope, such blind, pathetic faith. "He told me it is your fault, Mama. He said if you weren't being so stubborn and selfish about Daddy's old land, we wouldn't be in this mess. He said you are holding our future hostage." I looked at my daughter sitting in the wreckage of her life, blaming the only person who was trying to save her. She was completely brainwashed. Chase had gaslighted her so effectively that she was apologizing for his crimes. "Nia, look at me," I said, my voice sharp enough to cut through her hysteria. "Look at this room. Look at that sticker on the door. Chase isn't trying to fix a clerical error. He sold your house to a stranger for cash." "He loves me!" she screamed, shrinking away from me. "He is fighting for us. He is fighting for his life, Nia," I said coldly. "I went to the bank this morning. Chase didn't just sell this house. He drained your father's retirement trust. He used your passwords. He stole $500,000 from his dead father-in-law. That is not a liquidity issue. That is grand larceny." Nia froze. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. The reality was trying to break through, but she was fighting it. He said he borrowed it," she whispered. "He stole it," I corrected, "and he isn't going to use the farm money to buy back this house. He isn't going to pay off the mortgage. He isn't planning to save you, Nia." I stood up, looking down at her, letting the brutal truth hang in the empty air between us. "He is liquidating everything he can touch because he isn't planning on staying. He isn't trying to redeem the house. He is gathering cash for a getaway. He is leaving you, Nia, and he is planning to leave you with nothing but the debt." The phone buzzing against the hardwood floor sounded like a bomb counting down. Nia didn't move to answer it. She just stared at the screen flashing unknown caller with dead, hopeless eyes. I bent down and picked it up. I didn't say hello. I just pressed the phone to my ear and waited. The voice on the other end was low gravelly, the kind of voice that didn't need to shout to be terrifying. "Put Chase on the line." I stayed silent, letting my breathing steady. The man laughed a dry, humorless sound that made the hair on my arms stand up. "Fine. You tell your husband he has until Friday. 2 million. Cash. And tell him we know where his pretty wife is sleeping tonight. We know where his mother-in-law lives. If he doesn't have the money, we aren't just taking the house. We are taking collateral." The line went dead before I could speak. I lowered the phone slowly, looking at my daughter curled into a ball on the floor of her empty house. It wasn't a bank. Banks send letters. Banks send sheriffs with eviction notices. They don't threaten to take collateral in the middle of the night. Chase wasn't just in debt to creditors. He was in debt to the underworld. The picture finally came into sharp, terrifying focus. Chase had promised them the farm. He had sold them a lie, my property, to buy himself a few more days of breathing room. He had told these men that the sale was a done deal, that the money was on its way. And now that I hadn't signed the deed, the clock was running out on all of us. Fear is useless. Fear is what paralyzed Nia. I felt something else, clarity. Chase had put a target on our backs, but he had made a fatal mistake. He needed me. Without my signature, he was a dead man walking. That gave me leverage. I wasn't just the victim anymore. I was the only lifeline he had left, and I was going to use that to hang him. I stood up, smoothing my skirt, looking around the hollow room. We needed to move. We needed to be somewhere safe, somewhere he couldn't find us until I was ready to spring the trap. "Get up, Nia," I commanded, grabbing her arm and pulling her to her feet. "We are leaving. We are not dying in this empty house for a man who sold us out." My own phone rang before I could get us to the door. It was Marcus. I answered, expecting him to tell me he had found more financial records or decrypted another file. Instead, I heard the roar of sirens in the background. Viola Marcus shouted, his voice cutting through the static and the noise. "Don't come back here. Stay away from the farm." "What is it?" I asked, my heart skipping a beat. "The fire alarms just tripped in the north barn," he yelled. "The sensors are picking up heat signatures everywhere. The sprinklers are trying to keep up, but it is moving too fast." "And Viola, it isn't an electrical fire. The sensors are picking up accelerants. It smells like gasoline. The sky over the north pasture wasn't black anymore. It was a violent, churning orange. I stood on the ridge overlooking the valley, the heat radiating against my face, even from a quarter-mile away. The old barn, the shell that hid Elijah's empire, was being consumed. Flames licked up the sides of the weathered wood, sending sparks spiraling into the night sky like angry fireflies. Chase had done it. He had actually done it. He couldn't get the deed, so he decided to scorch the earth. He was betting on the insurance policy he had secretly taken out on the property, or perhaps he just wanted to terrorize me into selling the charred remains for pennies. It was an act of pure, destructive desperation. I felt a sob rise in my throat. Elijah's work, the sanctuary he built to keep us safe. It was all turning to ash. I reached out and grabbed Marcus's arm to steady myself. He destroyed it. I whispered, the tears finally spilling over. He burned it all down. Marcus didn't pull away. He stood beside me, watching the inferno with a strange, terrifying calmness. His face was illuminated by the flickering light of the fire, but he wasn't crying. He was checking his watch. "Let it burn, Viola," Marcus said quietly. I looked at him, shocked. "How can you say that? That is millions of dollars. That is our future." "No," Marcus said, turning to me with a small, cold smile. "That is the decoy. That is just the shell. Did you really think Elijah would put $5 million of sensitive equipment in a wood barn without a contingency plan? The server farm, the hydroponics, the cold storage wallets, they are 50 feet down. They are in a retrofitted bomb shelter Elijah installed during the Cold War scare. The intake vents sealed automatically the second the smoke detectors tripped. The internal oxygen scrubbers are running on battery backup." He looked back at the fire. "Chase is burning lumber plywood and some cheap irrigation tubing. The real treasure is sleeping safe and sound underground. He thinks he destroyed your leverage. All he did was light a beacon for the police." The realization hit me harder than the heat of the fire. Chase didn't know. He thought he had won. He thought he had broken me. He was arrogant, and arrogance makes men blind. I watched the flames roar, and suddenly the fear evaporated. It was replaced by a clarity as sharp as a scalpel. Chase wanted a terrified, helpless old woman. He wanted a mother-in-law who needed saving. Fine, I thought. I will give him the performance of a lifetime. I will give him exactly what he wants, right up until the moment the trap snaps shut. I pulled out my phone. My hands were steady, but I forced them to tremble. I dialed Chase's number. He answered on the first ring. I could hear the crackle of the fire in the background on his end, too. He was watching. "Chase." I wailed into the phone, pitching my voice high and hysterical, letting the panic bleed into every word. "Chase, oh God, the fire. It is everywhere. I am so sorry. You were right. I can't handle this. I am so scared, Chase. Please, I don't want to die out here. I will do anything. I will sign the papers. Just please help me. Come save us." The elevator doors opened onto the 35th floor, revealing a lobby of polished marble and aggressive modern art. This was the office of Miller, Stone & Associates, the high-priced legal firm Chase used to intimidate tenants and bury lawsuits. It smelled of espresso and intimidation. I leaned heavily on the cane I had purchased at a thrift store that morning, letting my hand tremble just enough to be noticeable. I had applied a foundation 2 shades lighter than my skin tone to look pale, and I wore a faded cardigan that smelled faintly of mothballs. I was no longer the director of administration who stared down board members. I was the confused, broken widow Chase wanted me to be. Inside the conference room, the air conditioning was set to a freezing temperature. Chase sat at the head of a long glass table flanked by 2 men in suits that cost more than my car. They were introduced as venture capital partners from New York, but I knew better. They didn't have the soft hands of bankers. They had the hard, watchful eyes of men who collected debts with baseball bats. These were the sharks Chase had borrowed $2 million from, and they were here to watch their investment pay off. Naya sat in the corner, shrinking into her chair. She looked terrified, her eyes darting between her husband and the men in suits. Chase leaned over and whispered something in her ear, a smirk playing on his lips. I caught the tail end of it. "See, baby," she finally broke. "We are going to be rich." He patted her hand possessively, not out of affection, but ownership. He thought he had won. He thought the fire had terrified me into submission. I shuffled into the room, letting the cane click rhythmically against the floor. Chase stood up, his face arranging itself into a mask of concern. "Mom?" he said, his voice dripping with fake sympathy. "I am so glad you made it. Please sit down. You look exhausted." I sank into the leather chair he pulled out, letting out a long, shaky sigh. "I am tired, Chase," I quavered, keeping my eyes lowered. "The fire, it was so big. I just want it to stop. I just want to go home." "Of course you do," Chase soothed. "And we are going to take care of everything. These gentlemen are here to help us resolve the debt and secure your future." One of the men checked his watch. "Let's get on with it," he grunted. "We have a plane to catch." Chase nodded quickly. He slid a thick stack of documents across the glass table. It landed in front of me with a heavy thud. The paper was crisp, legal size, tabbed with yellow stickers indicating where I needed to sign. "Here it is," Mom Chase said, uncapping an expensive fountain pen and placing it next to the file. "The transfer deed for the farm, the power of attorney, and the asset liquidation authorization. Once you sign these, the bank backs off, the investors get paid, and you can rest. Just sign here, and all our troubles disappear." I stared at the pen. It glinted under the harsh fluorescent lights. It looked less like a writing instrument and more like a weapon. Chase was watching me. His breath held his greed practically vibrating in the air. He was one signature away from stealing everything Elijah had built. He was one signature away from freedom, or so he thought. I reached into my purse and pulled out my reading glasses, taking my time to wipe the lenses with a tissue. My hands trembled, a performance I had perfected over the last 24 hours. I leaned forward, squinting at the dense legal text, letting my finger trace each line slowly, agonizingly slowly. Chase watched me sweat, beating on his upper lip, despite the Arctic temperature of the room. He was vibrating with tension, his eyes darting between my pen and the impatient men sitting across from us. "Chase, honey," I said, my voice quavering. "What does this part mean here? Paragraph 4, Section B. It says something about durable medical power of attorney and involuntary commitment authority. Does that mean you make my doctor appointments?" Chase forced a laugh, but it sounded more like a bark. "That is just standard language, Mom. Boilerplate stuff. It just means if you get sick, I can make sure you get the best care. It is to protect you." I looked down at the paper again. I knew exactly what it meant. It wasn't protection, it was a prison sentence. The clause gave him the unchecked power to declare me incompetent and place me in a state-run facility, the kind of place that smelled of urine and despair, while he liquidated my assets to pay his gambling debts. He wasn't just stealing my money. He was planning to erase my existence. He was going to lock me away and let me rot so he could keep his secret life in Florida. The man in the gray suit tapped his heavy gold ring against the glass table. Click, click, click. "Hurry up, old woman," he growled, his voice rough like gravel. "I do not have all day to watch you read. We have a schedule." Chase flinched. "Mom, please," he hissed, leaning in close. "These men are busy. You are embarrassing me. Just sign the papers so we can go home. You trust me, don't you?" I looked at him. I looked at the son-in-law I had welcomed into my family, the man who had sworn to protect my daughter. I saw the greed in his eyes, the fear, the total lack of conscience. "I trust you, Chase," I lied softly. I picked up the expensive fountain pen. The metal was heavy and cold in my hand. I hovered the nib over the signature line. Chase held his breath. The room went silent. "Wait," I said, pulling the pen back. I'm so worried about the farm. The fire was so big, Chase. Did we lose everything?" Chase rolled his eyes, his patience finally snapping. "It is fine, Mom. It is handled." But the building, I pressed, letting my voice rise in panic. "It wasn't insured, Chase. Elijah never insured the old barn. If it is gone, we have nothing. How can we pay these nice men if the collateral is ash?" Chase slammed his hand on the table. "It is insured," he shouted, desperate to silence me and get the signature. "I took out a policy 3 months ago, $5 million for the structure and contents I planned for this. The payout will cover everything. Now sign the damn paper." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the man with the gold ring stopped tapping. Chase froze, realizing what he had just screamed in a room full of witnesses. He had just admitted to insuring a property he didn't own months before it mysteriously burned down. He had confessed to premeditated insurance fraud and arson. I looked at him, and for the first time since I walked into the room, my hand stopped trembling. I set the pen down gently on the glass table. "Thank you, Chase," I said, my voice dropping the act, returning to the steel-edged tone of the woman who ran a hospital for 40 years. That was exactly what I needed to hear. I set the expensive fountain pen down on the glass table with a deliberate click. I took off the reading glasses and folded them slowly, placing them next to the unsigned documents. Then I pushed the cane away. It clattered to the floor, a useless prop I no longer needed. I straightened my spine, letting the years of feigned frailty drop away, returning to the posture of the woman who had managed 1,000 hospital crises. I looked Chase in the eye, and the fear I saw flickering there was the most satisfying sight of my life. I reached into my oversized handbag and pulled out the digital voice recorder. The tiny red light was still blinking, a steady, unblinking eye in the silent room. "Thank you, Chase," I said, my voice clear and sharp, devoid of any tremor. "You just confirmed intent to commit insurance fraud and arson on a recorded line. And since the policy is over $1 million, that makes it a federal crime." The air left the room. The thug with the gold ring froze his hand halfway to his pocket. Nia let out a small, strangled gasp, her hands flying to her mouth. Chase stared at the recorder like it was a live grenade with the pin pulled. His face went from flushed to a sickly shade of gray in a single heartbeat. You set me up," he whispered, his voice cracking. "You old witch!" "Give me that!" Chase screamed. He lunged across the table, his fingers clawing for the device. He knocked over the crystal water pitcher, sending water and ice skittering across the expensive surface. He was fast driven by the desperate adrenaline of a man watching his life end. But he never reached me. The heavy mahogany doors of the conference room burst open, slamming against the walls with a thunderous crack. Chase flinched, spinning around his hand inches from my face. Standing in the doorway was not a secretary or a coffee runner. It was Marcus. But he wasn't wearing his muddy jeans or his hoodie. He was wearing a bespoke navy suit that fit him perfectly, his shoulders broad and commanding. He didn't look like a farmhand. He looked like the CEO he was born to be. And he wasn't alone. Flanking him was Sheriff Reynolds, his hand resting casually on his belt, and a woman I had known for 30 years, Evelyn Moore. Evelyn, the toughest, most expensive civil litigator in Atlanta, a woman known in legal circles simply as the Shark. Chase stumbled back, knocking into his chair. "What is this? Who let you in?" Sheriff Reynolds stepped forward, blocking Chase's path to the door. "Mr. Miller, I suggest you keep your hands where I can see them." Marcus walked into the room, his eyes locking onto Chase with a cold, hard satisfaction. He moved to stand beside me, a silent wall of protection. Chase looked between us, his eyes darting around the room like a trapped rat. "This is illegal," Chase shouted, pointing a shaking finger at me. "This is entrapment. You can't record me without my consent. That tape is inadmissible." Evelyn Moore stepped forward. She adjusted her glasses and smiled a smile that promised absolute destruction. "Actually, Mr. Miller, under Georgia law, only one party needs to consent to a recording." Viola consented, but that is irrelevant, because this recorder is just a backup. She pointed to a small sensor on the ceiling. "We obtained a warrant yesterday based on the arson evidence your brother-in-law Marcus provided," Evelyn said, her voice ringing with authority. "This entire room has been wired for video and sound by the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, and the district attorney has been watching this meeting live from his office. You just confessed to a federal audience." "She is senile," Chase screamed, spit flying from his mouth as he pointed a shaking finger at me. "Do not listen to them. She is confused. These documents are legal. I have her signature right here. She agreed to everything." He was unraveling, his voice cracking with the hysteria of a man watching the ground crumble beneath his feet. He looked at the men in suits, his eyes pleading. "Gentlemen, ignore this theatrics. We have a deal. The land is yours. Just give me the money and we can—" "Mr. Miller," Evelyn Moore's voice cut through his panic like a guillotine blade. She didn't shout. She didn't have to. She walked to the table and placed a single thin document on top of the mountain of paperwork Chase had prepared. "You are missing a very critical piece of information, something you would have found if you were a competent real estate broker instead of a desperate gambler." Chase stared at the document. "What is this?" That Evelyn said, smoothing her skirt, is a title search. "You were so busy forging power of attorney documents and planning arson that you forgot to check who actually owns the North Farm." Chase looked confused. "Elijah owned it, and now she owns it. That is how inheritance works." "Incorrect," Evelyn said. She looked at the investors, ensuring they heard every word. 10 years ago, Elijah Davis transferred the deed of the farm into an irrevocable trust. Do you know what that means, Mr. Miller?" Chase stayed silent, his face gray. "It means," Evelyn continued, enjoying the moment, "that the property was removed from his personal estate a decade ago. It does not belong to Viola. She is merely the trustee. She manages it, but she has absolutely no legal authority to sell it, mortgage it, or transfer it. Her signature on those papers you tried to force her to sign, it is worthless. It has the legal weight of a napkin." I watched the realization hit Chase. He hadn't just failed to steal the land. He had been chasing a ghost. "And here is the best part," Evelyn added, gesturing to Marcus. "The trust has a sole beneficiary. Upon the death of Elijah Davis, the equitable title passed immediately to him, Marcus Vance." The room went dead silent. Chase looked at Marcus, then at the papers, then at me. You let me dig my own grave," Chase whispered. "You brought the shovel." "Chase," I said coldly, "I just let you dig." The man with the gold ring stood up. The sound of his chair scraping against the floor was loud in the quiet room. He didn't look at me. He didn't look at the police. He looked only at Chase. The boredom was gone from his eyes, replaced by a flat, dead look that was infinitely more terrifying than anger. "You sold us a trust," the man said, his voice low. "You took $2 million of our money against collateral you didn't own. You sold us Air Miller." "No," Chase stammered, backing away until he hit the wall. "No, I can fix this. I have other assets. You have nothing," the man said. He buttoned his jacket slowly. "We will be in touch." He walked to the door, his associate following close behind. As he passed Chase, he stopped. He leaned in close, intimate as a lover, and whispered loud enough for the microphones to catch. "Start running, Chase. It won't matter, but it will be more fun for us." The door closed behind them with a soft click. Chase slid down the wall, collapsing onto the expensive carpet, a man who had just heard his own death sentence. Sheriff Reynolds didn't wait for the echo of the investor's footsteps to fade before he pulled the handcuffs from his belt. The metallic ratchet sound as he secured Chase's wrists behind his back was the loudest noise in the room. Chase struggled, twisting his body, but Reynolds held him firm. "Mr. Miller, you are under arrest for first-degree arson insurance fraud and the forgery of banking instruments. And before you deny the fire, you should know that Marcus's cloud system didn't just record the barn. It grabbed the license plate of your truck at the gas station on Highway 9 an hour ago. We have video of you filling 3 jerry cans with diesel." Chase's face crumpled. The arrogance finally broke, revealing the pathetic, terrified man beneath. He whipped his head around, searching the room until his eyes landed on Nia. She was standing in the corner, her hands covering her mouth, shaking violently. "Nia, baby, please," Chase begged, his voice cracking into a sob. Tell them I would never hurt anyone. I did this for us. I did this so we could be free. Call my lawyer. You have to help me, baby. Do not let them take me." Nia took a step forward, her instinct to protect him kicking in even after everything. She looked at me, her eyes pleading. "Mama, maybe there is a mistake. Maybe he just—" "Stop," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it froze her in her tracks. I reached into my bag and pulled out the final envelope, the one I had hoped I wouldn't have to use, but the one that was necessary to sever the cord. I walked over to my daughter and placed the stack of glossy 8x10 photographs in her trembling hands. "He didn't do this for you, Nia," I said softly. "And he didn't lose the money in the market. He didn't make bad investments." Nia looked down. The top photo showed Chase on a beach in Florida. He was laughing, shirtless, tanned. Next to him was a blonde woman in a bikini. And sitting on Chase's shoulders, gripping his hair with tiny fists, was a 3-year-old boy. A boy with Chase's eyes. A boy with Chase's chin. I watched the air leave my daughter's body. She flipped to the next photo. Chase kissing the woman. The next. Chase signing a lease on a 4-bedroom house in Tallahassee. "He stole your retirement," I said, my heart breaking for her. "He stole your equity. He stole $500,000 of your father's money. And he didn't use it to save his business. He used it to support them. He has been paying for that house, that car, and that child with your money for 5 years. Chase screamed. It was a raw animal sound. "No, don't look at those, Nia, listen to me. It was a mistake. She means nothing." Nia looked up from the photos. Her face was terrifyingly blank. The tears had stopped. The hysteria was gone. She looked at the man she had worshipped for a decade, the man she had betrayed her own mother for. She looked at the husband who had held a gun to her head in the rain. "Get him out of here," Nia whispered. "Nia, wait!" Chase yelled as Sheriff Reynolds yanked him toward the door. "Get him out!" Nia screamed, her voice tearing her throat. "Get him away from me!" The deputies dragged Chase into the hallway. He fought them, kicking and thrashing. As they hauled him past me, he lunged, his teeth bared. "This is your fault!" he howled, his voice echoing down the corridor. "You did this, Viola. You ruined my life, you old witch. You will pay for this." I didn't blink. I didn't look away. I watched until the elevator doors closed, cutting off his screams. Silence rushed back into the room, heavy and final. I turned to my daughter. She dropped the photos. They scattered across the floor, a mosaic of a betrayal so complete it defied words. Nia sank to her knees among them, and for the first time in years, she didn't call for Chase. She just covered her face and wept. Justice had been served, but the cost was the sound of my daughter's heart breaking in a room full of lawyers. 1 year later, the North Pasture looked nothing like the scorched earth Chase had left behind. The new facility was a masterpiece of glass and steel rising from the ashes of the old barn like a phoenix. Marcus had used the proceeds from his legitimate crypto mining to expand the operation, tripling our capacity. We were not just supplying local restaurants anymore, we were shipping organic produce across the entire Southeast. The air smelled of basil and damp earth, a clean scent that washed away the memory of smoke and gasoline. I sat on the new stone patio, nursing a cup of herbal tea, watching the workers shift crates near the loading dock. One woman in particular caught my eye. She was wearing muddy coveralls and heavy work boots, her hair pulled back in a messy bun that had not seen a stylist in months. She was sweating, hauling a heavy crate of hydroponic lettuce with a grunt of effort. It was Nia. She was not wearing designer silk anymore. She was not driving a leased luxury SUV or getting manicures on Tuesdays. She was working. Hard. I had kept my word. I did not pay off her debts. I did not buy her a new house. I told her if she wanted to eat, if she wanted to keep a roof over her head, she would have to earn it. I gave her a job at the bottom of the ladder, scrubbing tanks and harvesting crops. Marcus sat down beside me, placing his own mug on the table. He followed my gaze to Nia. "She is exhausted," he said quietly. "But she is on time every day. She has not missed a shift in 6 months. She is learning the value of $1, I replied, taking a sip of tea. For the first time in her life, she is tired because she worked, not because she shopped. It is the best therapy money cannot buy. Chase was serving the first year of a 12-year sentence in a federal penitentiary. Nia had visited him once just to serve him the divorce papers. She told me later that he had cried, he had begged, he had blamed everyone but himself. She had walked out without looking back. Marcus leaned back in his chair, looking out over the rows of greenhouses shimmering in the afternoon sun. Elijah would have loved this, he said. He would have loved seeing what we built. I looked at the young man who had become the son I never had. I thought about the secrets Elijah kept, the long nights he spent building this legacy, in the shadows, the way he had protected us even from beyond the grave. He hid it from me, I said softly, not because he did not trust me, Marcus. He hid it because he knew me. He knew I would have tried to fix things. I would have tried to save Chase. I would have tried to be the peacemaker. He hid it because he wanted me to have a surprise when I needed it most. He wanted me to have a weapon when I finally had the courage to fight. Marcus smiled, clinking his mug against mine. To Elijah, I whispered. So that is it, my husband left me, not just a farm, but a weapon to clear the trash out of my daughter's life. Do you think I was too cruel to my son-in-law, letting him rot in prison while his wife scrubs floors to pay off his debts? Or did he get exactly what he deserved? Let me know what you think in the comments below. This story teaches us a powerful truth about the nature of protection and love. We often think honesty means sharing everything, but Elijah proved that sometimes the greatest act of love is keeping a secret until the moment it becomes a weapon. He knew his wife's heart was too kind, that she would have tried to fix her son-in-law's mess earlier, inadvertently destroying her own future. By hiding the farm, he ensured she had leverage exactly when she needed it most. Furthermore, Viola's journey reminds us that tough love is often the only way to truly save someone. By refusing to pay off Nia's debts and instead giving her a job, Viola didn't just save her daughter's finances, she saved her dignity. She taught us that enabling a family member's weakness only cripples them, but forcing them to earn their way back can rebuild their soul. True legacy isn't just about the money we leave behind. It's about the strength we instill in those who survive us. If you enjoyed this story of justice and redemption, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel so you never miss a new episode.